Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, attorney Kim Hegwood of Your Legacy Legal Care, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning and welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and our very special guest today is Dr. Michael Fossel. Good morning.
Good morning, and my special host. Thanks, Kim.
All right, you're the president of Telesight LLC. I'm not really worried about that. But the fun things that we're going to talk about today are going to be hope in the science, right? You're going to be talking about aging cells, telomeres. Hopefully you'll tell me what that is and the future of dementia care, because I don't know what a telomere is. So hopefully we'll get into. All right. Well, hopefully we're going to get into some of that fun stuff. But a lot of things we're reading lately. And so, for caregivers and people like me who work in the dementia field, we're all, we hear about plaques and tangles and amyloids, all those things. But your research points to something different. And so I think I read that it has to do with the biological aging of our cells and the telomere shortening, what is that?
How do I put this? The problem with dementia, Alzheimer's, for example, is not just the tau tangles and beta amyloid. The question is what's more fundamental? What drives both of them? An analogy I sometimes use would be if you have a COVID infection, you may have a low oxygen, you may have a fever, a white count, aches and pains, but none of those are COVID. They're things that COVID causes, but they're not COVID by themselves. The COVID is a more fundamental problem. Same thing is true here. Beta amyloid is not the cause of Alzheimer's. It's one outcome of Alzheimer's. It's likewise tau tangles and likewise behavioral problems and a lot of things. But the question is, what's the more fundamental driver of those and what's the optimal place to intervene?
So you talk about Alzheimer's isn't just a mystery of the brain, because it seems like research right now is changing from what you thought was Alzheimer's and nothing. And so, but you're basically, I don't want to say this, maybe thesis or research has showed that it's more of a predictable cascade driven by cell aging. Sorry about that. And so what does that mean for practical terms for someone watching a loved one decline? And how is this going to change our approach moving forward in dementia care?
Well, I'm not sure it changes what you do as you look at somebody you love. I mean, all of us know somebody with Alzheimer's, a neighbor, a friend, a relative, a family member. But it may change what we can do about it. So many times what we try to do with regard to Alzheimer's or other dementias is to intervene downstream. That is, we're looking at outcomes rather than actual disease process. The analogy I sometimes use would be Indiana Jones in that first movie, what it was called, and they're in Cairo and they say they're digging in the wrong place. Well, we sometimes dig in the wrong place. And where you're digging in the wrong place and trying to just use monoclonal antibodies, for example, it doesn't matter how many technicians you have, how big your lab, how much your funding is, how smart your people are, how hard they work. If you're digging in the wrong place, it's not a matter of how big your shovel is. It's a matter of finding the right place to dig. And we think that if we can dig in the fundamental place, we can actually reset, not only stop, but reverse much of the Alzheimer's and other dementias, and for that matter, a number of other age-related diseases, coronary artery disease, for example.
That'd be nice. And so that's one disease that runs in my family pretty rampant. But your work focuses on the telomeres and the reversal of cellular aging. For caregivers who feel overwhelmed by the science, and those of us that read a lot of this stuff, how do you simply explain why telomeres matter in dementia?
Well, let me start by saying telomeres don't cause aging. Telomeres don't cause dementia. They're part of a cascade of things that happens upstream, go all the way through a central process involving cell aging, and end up downstream with all the things we've heard about, beta amyloid and tau tangles and dozens of other things. The question for us is, what's the optimal point of intervention, both clinically and financially? I mean, what can we do that really makes a difference? Treating just the outcomes doesn't help. Treating just the upstream risk factors doesn't help much. Can we do better? What telomeres are, put it bluntly, is sort of the clock for your cells. They tell your cells how old they are. In effect, not really how old they are in years, but how old they act. And as we get older and telomeres shorten in our cells are less and less prone to repair themselves. So aging is not really a matter of entropy or wear and tear. It's a matter of how well we maintain or repair the ravages of wear and tear and aging. Maybe an analogy would be, if I clean my house once a day, it looks great. If I vacuum my house once a year, you can imagine what it looks like. The entropy, the dirt is still the same that my grandkids or the dogs drag in. It's a question of whether I maintain it or not. And that's true of your car, and that's true of your house, it's true of your office, it's true of your cells. And what we're trying to do is reset the cleaning process, the maintenance process, by resetting what determines how efficient they are in taking care of themselves. Human tissues, it works to some extent, to the degree we're able to do it. In animals, the question is, how well can we do it, and can we do it in people?
Well, it's like my brain says I'm 21, but I'm pretty sure my cells say I'm a little older.
Yeah, my cells say I'm 75, but I don't pay attention.
My great grandmother always told me that age was a state of mind, and she was just as much fun right up till the time she passed, and so I'm hoping to emulate her for sure. And so, but when you think about families having to go through this, because what you find is that doctors treat symptoms, okay, and I think many families feel kind of powerless because while you can manage symptoms, it doesn't necessarily help in the overall scheme of things. And so what makes how do I pronounce this? Telomerase based reversal therapy fundamentally different, and should caregivers realistically understand its potential? And explain that to me in real layman's terms for those of us that need smaller medical terms.
Hey, how can I get by pretending I'm an expert if I can't use Latin all the time or something, right?
I don't know. Give it to me. I don't need you to give it to me kindergarten level so I can understand it.
Oh, good. We're on the same level then. The telomerase is an enzyme that your body makes, well, it can make, and it resets the clock. And as I probably said, if we do this in human cells, which was first done in 1998, actually, in a classic article in Science, we find that we can take old human cells and make them young again. And we've known since the year 2000 that we can do this, and 2001, in at least 3 separate tissues, old human tissues and grow young human tissues. The question is, can we do it to you and I? And there the answer has been, we weren't sure how to do that. And we now have some tools that suggest we can probably pull it off. So what we're going to do is rewind the clock in your human cells to the extent we're able to, and see if we can reset not only the disease process like Alzheimer's or heart disease or renal failure, but your aging itself. And again, the data suggests we can pull this off. But as I said at the NIH 30 years ago last month, it's not a question whether you believe it or not. The question is, what's the data show? We'll see.
But how far back does somebody want to go?
I know, as my wife said,
I don't want to relive my teenage years,
right. When acne mattered, right.
Yeah, no. There's some stages of life I don't necessarily want to revisit.
I agree with you, right. I wouldn't mind being 40 or 50 or maybe even 30, but not a teenager. Oh my God, no.
Yeah, maybe 20 years younger, yes. And so, but let me ask you something kind of off the wall. So let's assume that, for argument's sake, that yes, we can do this. So, and you say, okay, great, we're going to reverse your body 20 years. How is that going to make us live 20 years longer? Or just make us live better?
Better, and probably 20 years longer too. Here the point is not to make you live longer, but it's to take away disease.
Okay.
And the fear, the pain, the discomfort, the fright of losing your keys and not being able, we all lost our keys at age 20. We didn't panic. At age 80, we panic. But all those things, shortness of breath, muscle weakness, brittle bone, all those things that occur, turning them back and getting rid of them. And we think it's doable. Again, we'll have to see what we can pull off, but I think we can do it as long as we target the right thing. Our initial target is Alzheimer's because it's fatal, and frankly, there's no cure for it. If I were targeting, osteoporosis, people would say, well, there are at least 5 things that we could do clinically, none of them very impressive. And you don't die directly of osteoporosis, you die of the complication. Okay, but Alzheimer's, people are pretty clear. You die of it, they don't like it, it scares the hell out of them, and nobody can do anything. I think we can do something, not just slow it, not just stop it, but actually reverse it.
Well,
within
you've
limits.
written a lot about reversing the aspects of Alzheimer's that may be possible by actually resetting the gene expression and repairing those cell
Mhm.
functions in aging cells. What signs or outcomes would you hope caregivers might see if this approach succeeds in human trials?
Well, there are limits. I sometimes think of this as Humpty Dumpty effects. Again, if I drop the egg and it bounces, I'm fine, but you crack the egg and it's all over the floor and I have to call a dog. Um, but the same is true of people too, or your computers. I dropped my cell phone in the water lily garden 2 days ago, and it's fine. But it could have been forever if it sat there and got mud in it, God knows what. The question is, how much damage is there? And with Alzheimer's, the same question pertains. If I have somebody, say there are many scales for Alzheimer's. Say I have a 0 to 6 scale, and if it's a 1, maybe I can get you back to 0. If it's a 6, can I get you back to 5? Can I go further? I don't know. And the more damage there is, the less likely we are to turn it back. We're aiming for people who are right in the middle, who clearly have Alzheimer's, and we'd like to see if we can turn it back to the point where, yes, they not only can drive and remember their name, but they can go back to work. That's our goal. We'll see.
So when do you anticipate human trials, or is that happening now?
Well, there are, in chemistry, they talk about rate limiting steps, things that actually control how fast you can do things. And for us, we have 2 global commitments for full funding, but we have to actually see the funding to move ahead. Then there's also the vendor who produces the things we need, and it takes time to get the quality and amount we need. And then there's the FDA, who they own the game, they set the rules, and we just obey them. And those things are largely out of our control, not entirely, but largely. Having said that, if things go well, and they never go well, do they? If things go well, we'll be in human trials for phase 1 human trials in 2 years and have something out in the clinics in 5. We'll see. Could happen. Inshallah, as they say in Arabic. God willing, Deo volante.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And so, well, that would be amazing, to be honest with you, to see that, because I think the devastating thing about Alzheimer's is that we tell people it's easily a 15-year death sentence. Most people are disgustingly healthy, but yet they can't really function in the real world anymore. And the cost of care is so expensive.
Exactly right. In the US, I haven't looked at the average of this for 2 or 3 years, but it was the last year of life for Alzheimer's patients, not being able to cure them, but just taking care of them. Throughout the US was $100,000 for that last year, and more so in the closer you get to urban environments and so on, and certain states. Our best estimate 3 years ago is that we can produce this for less than a third of that and make people better. So yes, we'd like to not only cure Alzheimer's, but actually lower the cost of healthcare.
Yeah, we'd like that too. And so, all right. So here's the big question caregivers often ask: is there anything I can do right now? So, based on what we know about cell aging, the effects of stress, infections, inflammation, toxins, trauma, metabolic health, all those things that come into play, what practical steps can families take today that genuinely support brain health?
I'd like to give you a lovely, I used to teach advanced first aid, and somebody always wanted to say, what do I do if somebody's fallen off the cliff, they've got diabetes, we're 10 miles from the nearest trailhead? And the answer is sometimes you can't do a darn thing. And the truth, roughly speaking, is about the same, which is I have no new advice for people caring for patients with Alzheimer's today. I think that where we are, I think, is sort of like 1950 with regard to polio. When you've got a polio victim in 1950, your child. It was rehabilitation, it was braces, it was an iron lung, God forbid. But what else do you do? What else you do is you have a Salk vaccine, 1954. I remember getting one of the first 2 vaccines. I think that's where we are. So I don't have very good news, as it were, the polio victims in 1950. My mother had it. Or for that matter, those of us caring for somebody that we watch their soul disappear.
Yeah.
It is heart-wrenching for both parties. Other than, I'd like to fix this for you, please.
Yeah, I know with families, we see a lot of families that have, dementia and Alzheimer's that come through my office. And it's hard for the people when they first get the diagnosis. And it ranges sometimes. I had someone in my office that had gotten diagnosed, and she was like happy, right? She's telling me, yes, I've been diagnosed. She was like happy. And I'm trying to think, how do you, I just really wanted to, I was trying to figure out how to ask her the question about how she was adjusting, because most of my clients are devastated. They're in my office, they're crying. We have to do something. This is coming on, so it's really interesting to see. And I'm super excited for your research. I'm hoping that it all works out. And so
are we.
so
Luckily,
most
the people who are funding us would like to see us. They don't expect us to lose money at this, but they're not in it for profit. They're not in it for second quarter earnings. They'd like to actually make a difference globally and be able to actually, as I say, lower the cost of healthcare costs and lower healthcare costs, as well as save lives and save souls in a sense. Because again, Alzheimer's, as I say, is the disease that steals souls.
Yes, most definitely. So Dr. Fossel, how does someone reach you if they want to get some more information?
Well, they can try reading my book, which is kind of handy, the book Reversal. They can also reach at telesite.com, which is our website. Now, we've tried to keep a low profile. We'd rather get the work done than get social media credit or publicity. Again, as I say, it's not a question of whether we believe it or not. The question is, what can we do? So we'll find out. But they can reach us on telesite.com.
Perfect. This has been really, really interesting. So I am super excited that you were on the show today. And we look forward to having you on again when you've got some more information for us.
I'd like that a lot. I'd like to
All
have
right.
more information. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcast as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.